Hello, welcome to this video where I'm going to be walking through a quick sneak peek of this numerology workbook that I have come up with and am sharing. Um, just for beginners, anybody who's interested in learning more about not just personal numerology and numerology from the perspective of using dates and numbers to interpret things, or even gematria, but also this other form of numerology, which is a little different, which I'm calling sequential growth. And that has a little bit more to do with seeing the numbers as building blocks and being able to use those building blocks for projects and troubleshooting, and even for finding solutions in relationships or other kind of problems that you can't usually typically or wouldn't usually typically think numerology can help with. There's no dates or numbers really involved in the thing. But we can still use the wisdom and the knowledge of numbers to help us with those scenarios. And so I've made this sort of beginner's course, which I'm offering. The workbook is what we'll go through. It's PDF file, just an e-file. It's 51 pages, and offer for free. If anybody's interested, you can send me an email. You can go to my website. I'll have the details below if you are interested. I will have video walkthroughs and an actual video course backing the workbook that will come at a later date, and I'll talk about that later. But for now, I just want to offer this as my freely offered service here, creation of mine, divine inspiration, and also basic common sense. I'm not claiming any rights to this kind of knowledge. It's by no means is it specific to me, and I have pulled wisdom pieces from many sources over many years to do this. So with that said, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here and we can look at what we've got. So this is the cover. This is the numerology. I know hopefully this share screen might not be ideal, but you can get the whole book for free. So, I mean, I just thought I'd just offer this as a quick little thing, even though some of the text might be blurry, and I'm just going to go through a couple of the highlighted kind of table of contents pieces of it. Know that if you're interested and you wanted to read more, went through things like too quick or whatever, just shoot an email to me or put a comment down and we'll get in touch, and you can take your time with it and look at it however you'd like to. I think I'll put it on Pinterest and Etsy as well, but that I'll put details in the comments when that is all set. So I have this first page, was a note just about everything, basically kind of just what I said here. And then this is really like a workbook. I really intend these things to be a working that people use and utilize and come back to, and to really integrate in their own way the knowledge in here, and to have this as a real reference point to help if you do charts or if you are doing interpretations, whatever. But yeah, I left this sort of classic page here. Part one is, I think, important to go through before two, which is the personal numerology section. I know we all want to jump forward to us and what we are and talk about our life paths and compare others and things like that. But inside and the foundation is really so important. And it really helps to start here first and to understand the basics before we get into personalizing things, right? It's kind of like if you were a seamstress and you're making clothing, you want to learn how to make the basic shirt and pants before you start, designing things with your own personal flares and touches and stuff. And sequential growth is a bit like learning about the mannequin, learning about the basics of how you cut a shirt and pants, measuring and all of that. It has great purpose. It has common sense built into it. It's an organic thing. Again, this is not of my creation. I am just adding words to the flow that I'm seeing, and organic nature already taking place. I have a little bit of an explanation here too for my sequential growth naming and all that. Here, I'm going to just scroll through these quickly. This talks about how we use pathways to understand how numbers grow into each other, why it is sequential, when in fact life isn't linear, and time is not linear, and everything is kind of cyclic. Why would we want to stop and look at things in this really restrictive sort of flow pattern? But it does make a lot of sense, and it's very useful. And so I talk a little bit about how it does look linear, and how when we're counting, it can be very confused with sequential growth. But counting the amount of something that is accumulating is different than sequential growth, and it's different than organic growth. In fact, counting can be kind of mathematical inversion, this sort of archonic thing, but I won't get into that. That's more of an alchemist level thing. And also know, like I've noted here at the bottom, it's very tiny, but you'll see if you get the book, that this is meant for this course is meant for beginners. And I'm writing right now an adept book, like a student book, also an alchemy level understanding for numerology too. So know that there's many tiers of understanding these things, and this is just the surface level, tip of the iceberg kind of get to understand here the flow. And I go into the second sort of understanding the whole pathway with the spiral stairway, and how it can seem linear, but yet it is actually a figure eight, this sort of cyclic things happening, in that it's actually not even just a flat figure eight, but it's really a spiraling upwards and downwards, a choice of directionality happening. And that's what I was talking about on the page before too, with the choosing whether you're going to ascend, stay and stagnate, or whether you're going to descend. And so those kind of break down the flow, and what numbers are happening. And now I have a page for every number here. One, of course, and each page is the same. As you can see sort of on the side here, I'll scroll through, I have 1, 2, 3, every number, and the breakdown is similar. I have a little blurb about them. I have dispositions of potential that talks about positive growth points, and then the typical downfalls we see at that stage or phase. I sort of interchangeably use stage and phase. Like I'm saying, this is brand new kind of thing for me, so the terminology is a little fluctuating. But yeah, basic of purpose and positions there, and I have always 3 key points for each number, and then I have the sequential position lessons, and then I have a little blurb about what the main lesson of the number is, right? And as I said, I have all of these 2, 3, and I show the beautiful growth, of course, flower of life, and how the circle grows, and how geometry grows, and how our thoughts create shape and dimensionality and reality, right? 5 and 6. And I have these little sort of symbols at the top, and the symbols at the top helped when we go through personal numerology too. They kind of key you back. So you can use 7 when you're looking at the personality 7, and it does have that little same guy here, the graduate. And that's a symbol of the 7, is really the researcher, the mastery, the graduate, the adept, right? And go through all the way through 9, and even 0. 0 is a real concept. It's a huge working in numerology, and it gets left out a lot of times in personal numerology because nothing reduces to 0. And a lot of times most personal numerology and gematria is very reductionist, and it's pigeonholed. There's purpose for that working, but at the same time, I don't always think that we need to be so pigeonholed into reducing down to this ultimate value and just saying the ultimate value is the only value. I talk a lot about the how it dissolves, and the way that the dilution happens, and what numbers are reducing into how. It does matter. And 0 is a great signifier and example of that, because the 0 holds great gravity depending on where it sits. And in sequential growth in itself, 0 is the interlinking of 1 through 9. We have a 0 on either end to link it and to add in whether you're going to move on or you're going to complete the project. And whether the project is at its 9 completion, it needs to graduate into 10 and be further developed in more gravity into 11, 12, 13. What happens when we have 10's place, right? And there's this greater gravity when we have bigger numbers as we go through place value. I talk about place value gravity in the adept levels, just because it's really not that important for beginners to learn about. And if you're gearing any sort of charts or project troubleshooting, whatever, towards people who are not familiar with sequential growth or numerology, really trying to integrate the concept of zero is probably little beyond the cusp, depending on who they are. Everybody's different, of course, but it's not always important. But we talk more about that in the higher courses. So yeah, now we have part two, which is the everybody's probably favorite thing, is the numerology charts and how we can interpret them personally. And I have the same thing, a little blurb about personal numerology and compatibility charts. And I don't get too much into compatibility and comparing other people's charts so much in the beginners levels. I really think it's so important to spend plenty of time, months, weeks, years, however long you'd like to, on just yourself, and not trying to cast your gaze and attention out at others and try to make um, too much analytical sort of judgments based on their numbers too much at the start. The best ground to learn is the internal ground. And here I have a little bit about what I talked about, reduction and dilution, and why it matters and how numbers build into each other. And I talk a little bit about how we have two different ways of calculating birth dates and the life path and how it actually really matters. And I get into this a little bit about with the master life paths, especially. Um, but to look at the two different ways that your life path reduces down can give you key points on different pathways for your whole life. And then you could signify, okay, I feel like I'm on this one a little bit more. Oh, I feel heavier towards this one. And that gives you a little bit more gravity on how to read your chart on whether the day, the month, and the year, what the ratios are between the relationship, because those really come together sort of like ingredients in a recipe. And we need more or less of them depending on your taste and what you like. It's very personal. But again, that's not totally a beginner's level thing. Um, and I give a little breakdown for everything. So if you want to learn more about what life path, attitude, day of birth, and the generational numbers, those are the main things that most beginners and most charts out there show, are those 4 placements, and they talk about them. There's more, of course, and there's different ones. We can get into that in the later levels. And here again is the master life paths, and I talk about what they are and about the reduction of them and why it matters, and how you can have a true master living in their master and choosing to make the choices that come with the master, or they could reduce back down into whatever the master is, the 11 down into the 2, and they really are more just a basic 2, and that's okay. They're not ready to make the choices yet, and it's always up to them. And then, much like I have the sequential growth, I have a sheet here for every single number. And like I said, it harkens back to their little symbol, and it gives out these life paths, a little blurb about it, the day of birth, the attitude. And similar, I have this sort of yin yang sign here about the balance and how we're flowing and the balancing that needs to happen, and the light and shadow sides of the archetypes, the characteristics. And then I have the personalities, sort of a quick couple of them, well-known signature types that go along with the number, and also affinities and services. So what they're basically naturally good at, and also what they should align their life's path to based on that number. And I have one for every single number, all the way through, as you can see, 8, 9. And I even did little blurbs for the basic 11, 22, and 33, the 3 major masters that most beginner numerology starts with and talks about and honors. And on the second page here, I go a little bit into the beginner's introduction about what other master life paths are about, and a little about why we honor them or don't, and how you can look for what the signatures are if you are a 44 or 66 or an 88 or 99 or whatever. And again, in the later courses, we'll go into those and we'll look at them and learn to interpret them better. But it's most important, and for beginners, those other than 33 and higher, 44 occasionally you could reduce to the 8, and it's still a single reduction. And so 44 could be included even in a master, pretty basic. But once we start to get 55, 66, they reduce back into tens placing, and there's a lot of confusion and too much interpretation that could happen with depending on each individual to start having these sort of archetypal cookie cutters that we call them, because there's just too many options. You can't really make it just as simple as you can with 4 or 5 different options, like you can with the numbers 1 through 9, simple. So that's basically why I don't start with that. And then I have some templates here at the end. Like I said, I really want this to be an interactive workbook. So I have this, which just shows sort of the spiraling, counting that how we build. And you could cut them out and use them sort of as key cards I wrote up there. You could use this as a printout for others. You could hand them with a reading, perhaps. I've done that. This is a little interpretation again about how you can use sequences and sequential growth. And this is a little sheet. You could make copies and use it as a writing tool, or use it as a digital resource to sort of help you with projects and see where you are within them, and then harken back to those sheets and use them um, to make notes and to ruminate with yourself and to pick out the individual ones that really work with you and which ones don't, and see why. And that's why I have some comparing and contrasting about growth and setbacks here that you could do some work on. I have this also sort of, are you confused about whether you need to move or stay? And if you do need to move, is the movement going to be ascension or descension? We really need to pull away from thinking dissension is bad or is wrong either, especially in sequential growth. It really, all interactions in any direction should be open and free and allowed. If you need to harken back to the step before, that's okay. You're reaffirming where you were before to strengthen this position that you're at. It doesn't take anything away from where you're at now. It's strengthening that position, in fact. And then it solidifies your next step in the next number. And it makes transitions more smoother when we do things like that. So yeah, whatever direction you need to move in, make it comfortable and fluid, and what you could learn from it. And that's basically what this sheet is about. There's a little further worksheet here that you could put the actual number of the phase you're at and do your own sort of contemplating there with a little bit of improv from me. This is a template that I use for charts, for personality charts. And I would give this as an example for people who are not familiar with the place setting, so that they have a little bit of understanding what each place setting means and how we came to it. Just as an example for a walkthrough for their chart, that would be the blank chart that you could use and that I've used. You're free to make your own or edit them, whatever. They are free for reuse and sharing, but not for sale. Obviously, please do not use them for resale. That's not allowed in my creative content here, whatever that is. But use them freely if you'd like to. Sometimes I use this one with the little stars on the background for people who it might apply to. Sometimes it's too confusing and chaotic for others who like a simple setting. This is another really interesting compare and contrast chart that is for the personality numbers. It's similar to the compare and contrast for sequential growth, but instead you could look at the light and shadow and the lessons in between. And then I have some end of the blank notes pages here about doing math on, building charts on, talking whenever you have a date and maybe you want to condense it down and make little notes about it, you could use these. I gave 3 blanks. You make copies if you'd like, or print multiples. Same thing with these little cute notes, just areas that you could just have to make some notes on further the working that I give above. And then I have this last page. It's just, about me and different platforms you can find more information on me on. So yeah, right here at the end. Thank you so much for joining me and seeing this little walkthrough. As I have sort of gave my plug, you can find me on Telegram, Spotify, or YouTube. Amory Speaks. There's amoryspeaks.com, of course, my website. And that has a bunch of information on my own stuff, readings and my own blogs and books that I've written. But it also has free tips and tools, whole resources of third-party information on learning more, not just about numerology, astrology, divination, but also metaphysics, introspection, meditation, health, wealth, happiness, all these things, really building a platform to help keep all of our ish together was my initial line, introspection, spirituality, and happiness. Those things really will keep us balanced and will keep us always gravitating towards our highest good and what's for our greatest best. And when we do that, we naturally do what's best for our families, for those around us we care about, by extension, our communities, and then by extension, all of humanity and the highest good of all, because our highest good always aligns with everyone else's. So thank you so much for joining me and watching this video. Thank you for your beautiful contribution to our collective. And thanks for witnessing mine, as always. I hope you have a beautiful day or evening wherever in the world you are. And I hopefully will see you next time. Oh, like I said, obviously, feel free to reach out if you'd like the course book. I could send it to you, and I will have some further videos coming in the future with some more walkthroughs about the actual content. So I hope you'll check that out as well. So, I'll talk to you next time.